This is a Play Your Way Network presentation. Get the full story at PlayLifeYourWay.com. 3 champions rose to show you how to curate your lifestyle and entertainment. Now, they've accepted the call to help you debate and rank the stuff you love. The Play Your Way. Play Your Way Network presents the Weekly Top 5 Podcast.
Weekly Top 5 Podcast. Yeah, that's right. This is your boy BK, the resident podcast DJ of the Play Your Way Podcast and part of the Play Your Way Network. That's right, along with my co-captains Derreck.
That's me. You know me as at Corrupting the System, family man, urban cowboy, but we're going to be having some good, healthy debates on this one, man. We got top 5s. Woo! Let's
top
get it.
5 and Nate.
That's me coming live from Dallas, Texas.
I love how he started in the same spirit that he started.
No family necessary.
No lanterns, no protection.
I love how he started off like this podcast the same way he started off like episode 1 of the Play Your Way podcast by corrupting the system from Dallas, Texas. I love it in the same spirit. But ladies and gentlemen and everyone between, with all due respect, yes, this is your resident podcast DJ BK, helping you understand how to curate your life and media.
The Player Way.
That's exactly right. Let me turn that up just a little bit and hit that just right.
The Player Way.
There we go. That's right. That's exactly how it feels. This is still the Player Way podcast, but it's our deep dive that we do every Thursday, and we call it the Weekly Top 5 Podcast. You're here for episode 1. You could have been anywhere else, but you're here with me. Yeah, it's your boy. And I'm here with my boys, with Derreck and Nate, and we're gonna do this thing the Player Way, man. So episode 1 is all about the best films of all time. Yes, you heard it right here.
Man.
There was an article that came out last week, top 5 on Friday, written by Ian Robert Parsons. Ian Parsons, thank you for being here with us, man. Ian is essentially, he's a senior writer of the Play Your Way Network, and we owe a lot of adulation to him. Yes, that's exactly right.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. Give it up to him. We owe him a lot of adulation. Without him, we were thinking about doing something different with the podcast and splitting off the second part, but Ian is the one who said, I like that you guys are doing these top 5s on the Playway podcast. Why don't we do this weekly column? And thanks to everyone who's been reading and writing to us about that column. That column has now evolved into its own brand and podcast with an amazing scrumptious, yet that is always my word, logo from your boy Nate. He gave us that exclusive.
The Player Way.
Exclusive.
Nate, thank you so much for that amazing art. That artwork. It's like that cool triquetra. I put a little animation with it on IG, man. Thank you so much for doing that for us, man.
It's awesome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Corbin Dallas. Yes, and if there was an episode to be Corbin Dallas like, that is this episode. So yes, we're going to talk about the best top 5 films of all time. We're going to go with some honorable mentions, and then we're going to go straight into the top 5. So as part of the honorable mention segment,
it began with the honorable mentions.
That's right. Shout out to Darren Marler helping us do narration.
The Player Way.
So part of the honorable mentions is we're going to go through the article. Nate, you got that article pull up. Tell us what the honorable mentions and the top 5s were from the Play Your Way Network writers.
All right, starting with the honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 1, Lean on Me. Not familiar with this movie. Dazed and Confused. I did like that one. 12 Angry Men. It's before my time. The Green Mile. Love that one. And The Shining.
The Shining. I love he said it the way that Groundskeeper Willie says it on The Simpsons.
That's
The
exactly
Shining.
Yes. Groundskeeper Willie. The Shining.
You mean The Shining? No, The Shining. We don't want to get sued, kid.
Yes.
And then what are the top 5?
Top 5s. Forrest Gump. Fantastic movie. Matrix. Another fantastic one. Fight Club. One of my personal favorites. Shawshank Redemption. Who didn't love this one? And number 1 is Pulp Fiction. Which I saw for the first time when I was in middle school, and I did not understand it very well until I
no
watched
one
it
did.
later.
No one did.
Yes, you
As an
can't.
adult, yeah.
Dude, there's a scene that you can't even get until you're like married. Like the scene when they're leaving town, and he's like, I told you specifically we can't go back to the house. Where's my dad's watch? I left it on the nightstand. It's like, I specifically told you. Like, I'm telling you, I've had that argument with my wife so many times. Pulp Fiction is such. Anyway, we're gonna come back to Pulp Fiction because it may or may not be on somebody's list. All right, and Derek.
It's on
we
our
would
network
not be
team's
doing
list.
honorable mentions the right way if we did not go down the top 10 best films of the American Film Institute top 100 films. So give it to us. Where can they even find this list?
They can definitely find this at afi.com and /100 years /movies. But you can, of course, go to afi.com and actually search top films of all time. And they actually have a pretty cool little interaction there. You can check off all the films you've seen, and then it gives you the assessment thereafter. So starting with number 10, according to afi.com, we got the AFI's 100 great American movies of all time. We'll be specific there. Number 10, Singing in the Rain. Number 9, Schindler's List. Very good film. Very good film. On the Waterfront, number 8, another great film. Of course, all these are good films. I'm not going to say that after each one. Number 7, The Graduate. Has been emulated in so many references in pop cultures. One of my favorite is on Archer when they do that. Number 6, actually, The Wizard of Oz. A very complete film. Number 5, Laurence Olivier's Lawrence of Arabia. And number 4, Gone with the Wind. Number 3, The Godfather. Very interesting placement there. Number 2, Casablanca. And of course, number 1 is going to be Mr. Rosebud himself, Citizen Kane. So they have a very strong list, very film-oriented list, I will say. How many have you seen most of those, B?
Yeah, I have seen most of those films. Some of those films may or may not make it on our list. The reason why I wanted Derek to read the AFI, that's the American Film Institute. So they're grading on for a different reason than probably the people who listen to this podcast.
Whole different scale.
They're grading it based on its contribution to film itself. All of the nuances that are there. As they're grading these things as works of art based on the tools and stuff that they had at the time that they created those films. So that's the reason why some of the stuff that's new that may have entertained people more or less over time, but didn't quite hold a candle to something that didn't have the same amount of stuff. Where did Star Wars fall on that list, by the way, in the top 10?
It was right there at number not even close to the top 100 on their list.
Okay, just want to make sure in case there's any Star Wars fans out there that are like, how come they didn't put that on our top 10? The AFI didn't put that on theirs as well. I was trying to pull up.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's number 15. My apologies.
Number 15.
Number 15.
Well, but it didn't quite make top 10, though.
I searched for A New Hope when I looked for it, so.
I actually clicked on Box Office Mojo's all-time domestic, but for some reason it is not quite loading up for me. Derek, can you go to boxofficemojo.com and take a look at that for me? My internet, I guess, is messing up on me. While he's doing that, Nate and I, let's talk a little bit about what makes an amazing film experience leading up till now. If you listen to episodes, never mind, Derek, I got it. It just popped up. What makes the best films of all time? What makes a film get to that list for you?
I think the number one thing is personal preference. I'm a guy that my attention is very easily divided, so if it holds my eyes on the screen the entire time is a good way of how I grade and judge. Suspension of disbelief. I mean, because that's what a movie's all about, right?
Yeah, movies were created to be a distraction. It's escapism at its best. I love that word. Got to give you that. Love those $1 million words. Indeed. And I borrowed that from Derek. Derek loves those $1 million words. He was in the middle of something. Speaking of $1 million words, we would not be doing this list any justice if we did not account for the box office hustle of it all. Okay, so the top 10 most the biggest domestic grossing films of all time, according to boxofficemojo.com. Shout out to Brad Brevet, amazing website that we use every single week, that we talk about box offices on.
The Player Way.
Indeed. All right, so top 10, going with 2017's Beauty and the Beast, $504 million. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, $532 million. The Dark Knight, Warner Brothers, $534 million. Star Wars: The Last Jedi, yes, $620 million. Right above that, Marvel's The Avengers, $623 million. Jurassic World, Derreck's one of his favorites, $652 million. Titanic, still holding strong after all this time.
Man, that's incredible. 21 years
on a movie that is mediocre. But anyway, moving on. It's not that it's a mediocre movie. It's just it's a overrated movie, big time. The actors in that film really did a lot for that story. There's not a whole lot of story there.
Also, Celine Dion's "My Heart Will Go On."
Yes, of course,
definitely.
Which is why Deadpool pulled a little bit out of that. But we'll talk about that toward the end of the episode. Black Panther number 3, Wakanda Forever at $693 million. Avatar, even more mediocre than Titanic, $760 million, but that was because everyone thought 3D was the new wave. It kind of was, but not quite yet. And then, of course, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, $936 lifetime gross. And I don't know where Avengers: Infinity War is going to end up eventually.
15 now, but it's already at 15 right now.
Exactly.
It's climbing up every day it goes by. It's another
Is
million.
that number 15 on the list? It sure is.
It's number 15. It was number 15.
Now,
and it did 114 million this past weekend.
Yeah, but it was a huge drop, though, man. That's people are
from
a little worried about that.
257. From 257, yeah, that's a big drop off, but still at 114. You know what I mean?
It may compromise its lifetime. It may compromise its lifetime gross because Deadpool is coming up real soon. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. I know that was another reason why they wanted to move that a little bit further out to give them a little bit better chance at lifetime gross. We'll see what happens on that. That'll definitely impact people's feeling about the Avengers, but the original Avengers is still up there really strong at number 6. So there we go. So this is how the different tables, but now you have entered the Playaway Podcast weekly top 5. Darren, lay it on them.
And then it was time for the top 5.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you have entered the top 5, the weekly top 5. What we're going to do is we're going to go around. We're going to do some honorable mentions, starting with Nate.
My honorable mentions were, I only had 2 of them, Fight Club and American History X.
Nice.
Strong.
Very
American
strong.
It was a
History
point in
X,
time
man.
where Edward Norton was my
book.
favorite actor, and
Yeah.
it was due to those 2 movies.
Nice. All right, Derek.
I have The Sixth Sense on there as an honorable mention because I do appreciate that film. He is one of my favorite directors. I think he's really good at creating scenes, but not necessarily always movies, which brought me, going on from that, that's a whole rabbit hole I'm not getting into. V for Vendetta, another good film, and a good comic adaptation, actually, one of my favorite comic adaptations. And I'll still throw in Wizard of Oz, because that still is a majestical film just to see. It holds up for what it was from coming out in 1939, so I feel like I must honor that as well before we get into our top 5. What about you?
I have one of my honorable mentions is The Lion King. In my opinion, pound for pound is one of the best cartoon animated films ever created. Animated action, you can't do much better than The Lion King. And then Iron Man is going to be one of my honorable mentions as well, along with Star Wars. So those are my 3 honorable mentions, but they did not quite make my list. And final honorable mention, The Matrix. Also did not make my top 5 list. So there we go. And then it was time.
Number 5.
Boom.
All right.
Welcome to the Thunderdome.
Exactly. Number 5. All right, Nate, starting with your number 5 film of all time.
So let me just preface this by no means am I saying, like these movies are.
That's Now that I built it up a disclaimer.
These are my,
let me do people this. Let me do people a service. Okay, in case you've never listened to the Play Away podcast before, it is totally possible. One of the things about the Play Away podcast is it's usually a weekly show. You can go listen to it right now. It's not for kids; it's for adults. We talk and we do all kinds of cursing. How are we doing so far? We didn't use any swear words yet, have we? By accident?
Crime and Netleys, we're doing fan-freaking-tastic.
Wow, we're doing fan-for-tastic. Exactly. Okay, so Nate, when he did his top fives, he usually does it based on the films he's seen the most. It's the replay value. So when you listen to Nate's list, he's talking about the films that have the best replay value. When you listen to Derreck, he's Mr. Corrupt in the System. He's doing things that really make you think, the twists, the turns, the things that give you angst, the nail biters, okay? The things that really made a lifelong impact to the point where his lexicon was changed by the script. Okay, he uses quotes from these movies on a daily basis. And then BK, your boy BK, I tend to do things based on, I am a former film student. I do things based on, I'm a video editor, how I would do things. I look at the contribution to film. So AFI's top list is going to be similar. However, I am a black man, so there's a lot of stuff I'm going to knock off that list because certain audiences love it, and some things may be overrated. So like Titanic, it's overrated. I'm going to bring some things up a little bit culturally that helps kind of balance the scale. So that's when you listen to weekly top five in terms of film, and you're going to get a lot of film top fives to start the podcast out. You're going to get a lot of that from us. Okay. All right. So Nate, lay it on us. Number five top best film of all time from Nate.
My number 5 is Inception. I think this was on my action list, but it's a smart movie. I love it. I watch it all the time. It's definitely one of 2 of my favorite Chris Nolan movies, and I think Chris Nolan is the best director working today.
I would love to do a top
director.
5 director list with us, man. He's definitely in the conversation.
What is it about Inception that really made that impact on you?
A lot of it was not really necessarily knowing what the movie was completely about, and that's due to, I know how you guys love marketing, but Inception's marketing was fantastic. The trailers were awe-inspiring, yet didn't give away plot details at all. I'm a big fan of Leo's too. He's an amazing actor.
One of the best actors of all time. That may or may not be our next list.
Surprisingly, up to that point, I don't think we've ever seen Leo in kind of an action movie setting. And I think he pulled it off pretty well, just being him, being the every guy. He's not super buff. He's not doing anything that's outside of the realm of possibility.
Cerebral for sure.
It's just a smart movie.
It's a smart movie, and what was really his first true, I would say, action-y film. It was kind of comedic as well. Was Catch Me If You Can, and it brought some of those notes in that was great about him when he played Frank Abagnale. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite movies. Inception, definitely. I mean, it's a great movie.
Yeah. All right, Derreck, number 5.
My number 5 is actually a movie from 1976 titled Network. It's
nice.
It's one of my favorite.
If I remember correctly, it's the film that edged Rocky out the year for the Oscar, isn't it? The Academy Award, right?
Man, so you're listening to a master at work that knows his film reference. Don't even try to argue with this guy. You're 100% correct. This movie was critically acclaimed. It came in and it was very... It was rare for a movie to come out that was a fight the system movie that was actually of the level that it could put out at that. This wasn't a backroom movie. This was a very large opening. This was what everybody was curious about back at that time, of wondering what really went on behind the cameras at these network stations, because these people were becoming gigantic superstars off just reading the news. And this follows the story of a cynically genius that goes off on the air and he speaks the truth. And I've read several of that person's quotes on the Playerway podcast and just in real life. And it's one of my favorite films to watch. A lot of the things that are even stated in this movie still hold up today with no difference. And that is the mark of something.
I mean, Rocky is the only reason why that film is not more well known to the public. It's one of those films that as Derek said, it foretold a lot that was going to be coming in the future. So yeah, I can totally see why, and the Academy agrees with you. So there you go.
Absolutely.
Nice number 5. My number 5 is going to be a film that we laughed a little bit about prior to the beginning of our top 5, and it is, as groundskeeper Willie would say, The Shining. The Shining, in my opinion, is one of the greatest films ever imagined via Stephen King and via a written format, but then also one of the best films ever made. An amazing film. It has so many levels to it, to where people are still studying it to this day. Stanley Kubrick, his style that persists to this day, with one of my favorite films, Eyes Wide Shut. A lot of the notes from Eyes Wide Shut come directly back to The Shining. You want to talk about what makes a horror film. Horror films were campy, was all about body count. It was all about macabre. This film really dug into the cerebrum. It really helped you understand what is fear, what is scary. And ultimately the answer was looking into the darkness and seeing nothing. And your brain makes things up in its mind to say, this is why you're afraid. To this day, people still don't understand The Shining. You can't just watch The Shining one time and understand the film. You got to watch it multiple times, and that replay value that Nate really loves to talk about, it's within The Shining. It's not something for little kids. When I tried to watch The Shining when I was younger, I thought it was boring. So when I hear people say The Shining is boring, well, grow some hair a little bit on your... And
might have been a while.
And we're back to technical difficulty.
Scratch.
Grow some hair on your chin.
Your chin.
Yes. Grow some hair on your chin, and then maybe you might be able to appreciate The Shining. But amazing chew of a film, and there's levels to it, as Meek Mill would say.
Number 4.
Number 4 for me, despite what we talked about previously on the Playaway podcast, is Empire. This is the movie that made me fall in love with the Star Wars universe.
Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, what Nate is talking about honestly, is and what Nate is talking about, to a little shameless plug right now. We talked a little bit about Star Wars versus the MCU and what we thought in terms of as a total saga. But I agree with Nate in terms of Empire Strikes Back. In my opinion, Infinity War is the first film within the MCU that even comes close to the Empire Strikes Back, and I don't think it beats it. Empire Strikes Back, as a film itself, is powerful. Nate, go ahead with it.
Well, I just think there's a reason why this is universally praised among Star Wars fans as being the best Star Wars movie out there. It definitely is. It established even more so that Darth Vader is, a villain that should be feared. And it left you in a state of, unknown. Before I even, 5 minutes later, I would put in the tape to Return of the Jedi, but in those 5 minutes, I had no idea what was going to happen in between. And I don't know. As a kid, I loved that.
And as that generation, they had to wait 3 years for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Just that level of film to come out, to have to wait 3 years. I mean, we're kind of spoiled in this day and age where we only have to wait a couple of months for the next installment of sagas to still be on that level. But that's a great film.
I mean, Empire Strikes Back is the film that everyone quotes when they talk about how awesome Star Wars is. Yes, people say use the Force, Luke, but really the real quote is, Obi-Wan never told you whatever happened to your father. He told me you killed him. No, I'm your father. Exactly.
Boom.
No! That is the quote.
Yes.
That is the quote. There is another Skywalker.
This guy might be a good voice for the
there's
Joker.
Other, I'm telling you, though, these are the. I mean, come on, man. Mr. Colt 45 is in this film. Billy D. No, my brother, you gotta get your own. I'm telling you, it was just Empire did. I mean, we're laughing about that, but really putting Billy D in Star Wars with that representation is important. Okay, the first Black Panther, before Meteor Man, before Blade. I'm telling you, it was Billy D, man. I mean, he did it, man. He stepped up there and he did that thing. You know what I'm saying?
Robert Roundtree's in the conversation. Robert Roundtree's in the conversation. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, Shaft is good and all. Shaft is good and all. I mean, but that's blaxploitation. We talking about legitimize, my brother. Legitimize.
Talking about space.
Exactly. We talking about a galaxy far, far away, and brothers is up there and they still perm. You know what I'm saying?
Woo! Got that space press.
Yeah, serving bean pies in the cafeteria. You saying got white folks working for him. You know what I'm saying? No windows though. Exactly. So, but they had walls. So anyway, so your Empire, very good with Nate. Very good with Nate. I appreciate that, bro. Derek.
My number 4, as you just heard that scrumptious voice indicate, it is The Color Purple. No hemming and hawing about this. The Color Purple is a great film. It's 32 years old, and you can pop it in right now, and you're not going to worry about it being an old movie because it's a period piece, first of all, and it is a great film about the accuracies of American history. So it's a powerful film. It's one of those that you need to watch just because this is a statement. This is a story. This is a relatable tangible tale that we've talked about so many times, and it's a quoted movie. It is. This is a film you have to see because if you're going to be a film enthusiast, if you will, you have to see The Color Purple.
And Derek,
Steven Spielberg did it.
And Derek, I'm gonna have to pull the record on you because we're gonna save a little bit more for the rest of the episode because my brother, that may be coming back. You heard it right here on the Playway Podcast.
I look forward to it.
All right. Looking forward, as Derek said, is a little film by Quentin Tarantino. It was the film that really put him up on the map. And it is Pulp Fiction, man. Pulp Fiction is the one that did it, man. It was the film that really put him on the map. It really changed how we thought about film. Pulp Fiction changed storytelling in an idea that we had to tell a story in a linear fashion, really jumping all the way around, pulling his ideas from, he pulled the idea from Pulp Fiction comic books, and said, okay, we're going to do this thing a completely different way. Really, I mean, it's an impactful film, man. A film that it reinvigorated John Travolta's career. John Travolta was on his way down when this film came out. It took Samuel L. Jackson from being a guy who was on these different films playing homeless guys and crackheads, and it put him into A-list quality. To this day, this man appeared in Infinity War, and his last line was something that Jules would have said. Okay,
it was.
It is his trademark as an actor. This one role, Bruce Willis. I mean,
it defined his acting career. Even though he was in Jurassic Park,
Death Wish with Bruce Willis, if not for Pulp Fiction.
I'm telling you, dude.
That's right.
Uma Thurman, dude. Like it really launched a lot of careers, invigorated a lot of careers, and it changed film. I mean, Pulp Fiction changed film. Okay, when it came out, an amazing film that has crazy replay value. Down to you want to know what happened to those characters. Every time I watch, I still hope John Travolta's guy doesn't get killed. I want him to live on, but
spoiler.
He had to go.
Spoiler.
Exactly. So
you want to know what's in the suitcase.
Everybody wants to know what's in the suitcase, man. The MacGuffin. Really taking the idea of a MacGuffin and really putting it on Front Street for everybody. If you don't know what a MacGuffin is, film school for a second. We're going to give you a quick little exclusive.
Roll the reel.
Whoa, roll the reel.
The player
nice save, Derek.
Exclusive.
MacGuffin is this in filmology. Is the rabbit's foot? It's the thing that it has no meaning. It doesn't matter what that thing is, but everybody's looking and trying to get that thing. It's a plot device. That's all it is. And so they took a MacGuffin and really turned it on its head. And to this day, people want to know what's inside the box. What's in the box? What's in the box? All right.
Oh, we know what
we know where that ping pong ball came from. We know where that ping pong ball came from.
Pepper Potts.
Pepper Potts. Moving on to number 3.
Number 3.
All right, number 3.
Number 3 is the most nascent on my list, and I
nascent.
actually
I like
struggled
that.
I struggled on to whether or not to actually put this on my list, but with time, I'm sure this will jump
in time
substantially higher. Exactly, it's Infinity War. I spoke about this. I spoke about this during our review of it, of how much it made me feel like a kid again, and just watching in awe the entire time. And we spoke about this on the last episode of the Playerway podcast. This is the closest thing we got to an event comic ever. Where you didn't need
You liked it when I said that,
backstory.
didn't you?
Yeah. You didn't need backstory to the characters of the movie minus Thanos, which is why he took front and center. We just know and saw these characters come together and interact, and the various interactions from Pratt with Tony Stark and Doctor Strange and Tony Stark. It's what we've been waiting 10 years to see, and we got it. We absolutely got it. I think so.
It paid off,
number
man.
3.
All that investment. Man.
Nate, you were bold.
Trust me. It was to number 3 on the top. I'm so glad we waited to do this list. I was like, we need to wait. I'm so glad that this is the first episode. That's gonna cause some debate. So you're putting Empire Strikes Back at 4 and Infinity War at 3?
Yeah. And I as I said, with time, there's very good possibility this will jump even higher.
In time.
I haven't seen it. Yeah. I haven't seen it as many times as Empire, but I guarantee I will.
Man, Nate, I'm telling you, man, 60% of the time, you work every time, baby. I love it. You gave it to us. Gave us that little controversy, but it's still so empty without Nate. I'm telling you, man. That's love it. Derek, number 3. Oh, I could have made a good run with that, but it feels so empty. Number 3.
Nice. That's all right. My number 3 is my only comic movie that is going to make it to this list. My only one. And I think it's such a great film. I think it's very true to the graphic novel. I like that BK's getting so excited because he's like, now he knows what I'm about to say. And the only adjustment in this film was the ending, as it should have been, because in the 80s it made sense to have a monster attack the city, and in present day and for future generations it made sense to have a nuclear device. This movie that had one of the best villains of all time, and I should have respected him when I gave my villain list, and it's Watchmen. A dark film, a very Zack Snyder through and through, but it made sense for this movie. A dystopian alternate reality told very darkly. The graphics and special effects are amazing on this film. The rewatchability is on there. I try to watch this at least annually, if not quarterly. And for being almost a decade old, these special effects are right up there with everybody else right now today. This movie could come out today and it would still be on point. And it's a great film. Great quotes, great message. If you can't help but when you watch this to be questioning a lot of things over the next few weeks. You can't help but be curious about the system that I'm trying to corrupt. You can't help but be curious about the machine that's out there, the who's behind the curtain when you watch Watchmen. It's a great film. I love it. It's definitely my solid number 3 in my top 5.
Yeah, I can understand why you said Watchmen. The Watchmen that film had such an impact on DC's extended universe and film, even though they didn't do a crossover film. It affected the tone of every DCEU film. From there on, every film that has been made, whether it be Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, whether it be Man of Steel, whether it be
Suicide Squad, Justice League.
There you go, man. Thank you for helping me out. I'm over here DJing.
Even Aquaman.
That's all right, man.
Even Aquaman, even though I'm not
that same visual style to it, and that's part of the problem. Is it's such a good film. Watchmen is standalone a great film. It's just it doesn't need to be what DC doesn't need to be that. There's a reason why The Watchmen was a standalone.
Watchmen is that. Yeah. Watchmen is that. It is a graphic novel derived as such, and it should be just that.
Yep. But the times they are changing, man, and it's time to move on. And my number 3 is a different shade. Not quite that yellow, but purple. And yes, the color purple is my number 3. Color Purple is the first film I ever watched in life that made me actually cry. When God is trying to tell you something, musical scene, it is a very touching scene. The Color Purple, if you've never seen it, it is the closest that you're going to get to Alex Haley's roots via a big screen film. We haven't gotten.
I always associate those two together.
Yeah, exactly. 12 Years a Slave is good, but it doesn't have the spirit of Roots, and that's part of what I don't like about 12 Years a Slave. There's a heart to Roots that no one's been able to reciprocate. The closest you'll get is Steven Spielberg in The Color Purple, and yes, it is a Steven Spielberg film. Color Purple is incredibly touching. Before that film, Whoopi Goldberg was this jumping jack flash in the pan type of actress. It transformed her into a more serious actress.
Perfect. That's perfect. Right
yeah,
there.
Exactly. Danny Glover, Oprah Winfrey, man.
Oprah Winfrey.
You told Harpo to beat me. All my life I has to fight.
Oh, man.
But I kill him dead.
Sophia.
God knows I love Harpo. But I kill him dead. I'm telling you, man.
No fish touch my face. No, sir. No fish.
I'm telling you. I mean, if you want to know what post-slavery was like for African Americans, watch The Color Purple. That is what this is about. It talks about going back to Africa and trying to find that connection to the homeland, but what it did in a world where there was no internet and there was no phone calls, and what it meant to care about somebody when you're far away from them, and dealing with, you got to deal with all of the stuff of Reconstruction, but also having to deal with social norms and societal norms being built within the black community. I mean, it's a beautiful film. It has heart, humor, and spectacle. And that is the thing that,
nice.
As Nate says, we need a shirt with that on it. I mean, that is it. But anyway, Nate, you created that, right? Like that, nobody else had. That was you, right?
Not that I can think of. No.
So I mean, heart, humor, and spectacle. That's it, man. That's it, man.
I just Googled it, and Nate's picture is the only thing that came up. So it's definitely all Nate's. I'm telling you. All right.
So that's it. That is Nate's. And that's something. Whenever you hear that on the Playway podcast, that means if that particular person says, if you watch that, you are definitely doing it.
The Player Way.
Number 2.
So number 2 for me is, I don't know how to preface this. Around like 99 to 2003, I kind of fell out of comics a little bit. I was ending high school, going into college. Comics were not the first thing on my mind. And this story came out in 2004. I was a sophomore in college. And there were two universal laws, or there's a universal law in comics. Everybody does come back, yes. But there's two people you never bring back. And that's Uncle Ben and Bucky. And in 2004, a writer named Ed Brubaker and an artist named Steve Epting did the unthinkable. And they did it in such a way that was just massive. And
they say that a hero.
Again. And on top of that, it took a character who was rather bland, Captain America. Let's be real. He's goofy. He's got a goofy name. He's got a goofy outfit. He's borderline Superman. He stands for truth, justice, and American way, obviously. But this comic changed all of that for me. And the movie did the same. It didn't follow the comics exactly, but it took a character who, in the 2 previous incarnations we saw him, was probably the worst of the Avengers, and made him immediately my favorite character in the MCU. And it's Captain America Winter Soldier.
Woo! Comics made it on here again.
The Player Way.
As the comic arc did, this movie did for me. It made me love Captain America. It made me yearn for Bucky as Cap, to reunite as friends again, you know. And I don't know. What can you say? The
Dude,
Russos got...
All you have to say is 2 words. Lemurian Star. That opening scene and that song where you finally see why Captain America is such a badass. He basically is Solid Snake with superpowers.
Yeah, why he is a super soldier. And I mean, more so than that, it's that friendship between him and Bucky is, I think, the underlying narrative on his arc. And I don't know, you know, I've always loved this. It's amazing that the comic came out and then 10 years later we got a movie adaptation, and that made me very, very happy.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Captain America, the Winter Soldier. You heard it right here, man. That's number 2. Man, number 2 for Nate. So we see where Nate's list is going. Derek, number 2.
My number 2 is... It's one of my favorite movies, and it's a contender for number 1. Like, maybe in time, this may become my number 1, but it's a great film. It just, you follow through these characters, and you're just watching this, and you're on the edge of your seat. You're just as stressed because, man, if you're that deep and only 2 cops know that you're that deep, and they're no longer in the picture, and you just have to make your story... It is the Martin Scorsese film, The Departed. A great.
The
Departed. You're parking your car in the Harvard Yard, cold hot dog, flat beer, socks at Fenway. Yes, The Departed.
Boston Lager, go watch some Mystic River.
Yes, man. Yes. I love this movie. This film. I'm insulting it if I just call it a movie. It's a film in movie format, and it's just something you're shocked in this movie. You're stressed. You're angry. You are connected to these characters, and it's just a great story. It's just so wonderfully told, and it's my number 2 film of all time. Like I said, in time, it may become number 1.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. When that drop kick hits,
it didn't drop kick Murphy.
It doesn't even hit. It doesn't even hit till it feels like it's in the middle of the movie, but it's not. Like, the movie is so immersive that when they finally play the title, you're like, oh, they haven't even played the title sequence of this film yet.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, it is an incredibly stressful, angsty film. I love that I said Derek's list is all about being cerebral and angsty, and this is it, man. Anybody can die in this film at any time.
Anybody
it is real.
Can.
It is visceral, and it is all about. I always like to watch The Departed. Sorry. I like to watch.
I feel like it has to just. You have to just say it like.
I like
to
watch. Here's how I like to watch mob films. This is like if I had a week to watch mob films, I'd like watch some episodes of Boardwalk Empire, probably toward the end of it. Then I'd go back and I'd watch. What is it? The
Riding Through the.
No, not that. Sorry, the music.
Sopranos.
No, not the Sopranos. The best. Not Casino. The one
Casino.
right.
Goodfellas.
Yeah, Goodfellas. Sorry. So
they took it off of Netflix. Don't even get me started.
So I'd watch some episodes of Boardwalk Empire. Then I watch Goodfellas. Then I watch Casino. Then I would watch some episodes of The Sopranos, and then I'd watch The Departed. Like that's how I would watch it. It's like it just kind of goes through how mob mentality has been, and then I probably would finish off with Black Mass because Black Mass is incredibly good too.
Okay.
If you've not seen Black Mass, man, Black Mass is definitely good in there as well. I feel like there's and Donnie, not Donnie Darko. What's the one with
Donnie Brasco?
Donnie Brasco. Yeah, Donnie Brasco's another one, the good one to watch in there as well. So yeah, so definitely. But Derek said I'm shipping off to Boston for number 2. So there you go.
Yeah. Really good tea up there.
There you go. I appreciate that, bro. I had that for you, man.
Thanks, man.
My number 2 is all about a man who did what any of us would do if he was in this scenario, most likely. But
is it on the wall?
But he'd probably do what any of us would do in this scenario, and yet he didn't do it. And the whole film, you're wondering if he did do it, but you never have you don't know if he did it or not. You don't know if he's guilty or not. And then it comes out that he wasn't guilty. A man who had finally given in to his fate. He had decided to not try anymore, to stop digging deep, to stop trying to get free. And the people that he grew to love stabbed him in the back just to keep him, because he was that damn good at what he was doing. And so he picked up those tools, that hammer again, applied pressure over time, and found his Shawshank Redemption. That is my number 2.
Oh, he brought it all together.
Yeah. Stephen King did it again. This is the second time Stephen King is on my list. Well, it might be third. Is Stephen King Color Purple? I can't. No, I don't know. Let me go back to that. Derek will look that up. But anyway, I love the Shawshank Redemption. An amazing film. Tim Robbins has had a career since then, but the bigger swan song of this was the man who plays God, Morgan Freeman, man. The man who doesn't age because he was born 80 years old. An amazing. All I can keep saying is an amazing film. To get things. You know, Nate talked about film being escapism at its purest form, and that's what this film is all about. It's about what would you do if you were in a scenario, and every time you watch this film, you're like, I couldn't have done it. I would have been the guy who would have given up or hung myself. But this guy did it. If one person can make it, we all can make it. You know what I'm saying? So, amazing film. Who did you look up who wrote this film? Who wrote the story, Derek?
Stephen King.
No. I'm sorry. The Color Purple.
Oh, The Color Purple? Oh, I did not. Actually, let's see. Screenplay, the novel Alice Walker.
That's Alice Walker. There you go, Alice Walker. For some reason, I don't know why, but I was just trying to make sure I covered my bases. So, yes, this is the second time you've seen Stephen King on my list. There you go. All right, so, and then it was time for number 1.
And number 1.
Number 1, Nate.
Sticking with the trend of comic book movies, had the MCU not worked, I think this would still be the template to how comic book movies should
Really? This is your number 1?
Well, just because I love Nolan movies.
Oh, okay, good. That's what I thought you were going with your number 1.
Yeah. It's The Dark Knight. Perfect story, perfect villain, perfect supporting cast. There's really not much to say outside of what's already been said from the three of us about this movie. But yeah, Dark Knight, had the MCU not worked, this is what everybody would still be striving.
You're right about that. You're right about that. Yeah. The Dark Knight was the first film that. What made The Dark Knight a contender for an Academy Award is it wasn't a comic film. It wasn't It was a detective film. It was a crime film. It was a true crime mob-like film. It reminded me a lot of Heat. If you've seen that film, so it's got a lot of those notes. Nate, tell us what you love more about this film, bro.
Well, I mean, the main thing is the Joker. The Joker makes the movie for me. Just that sort of villain, yeah, obviously with his posthumous Academy Award, but that sort of villain I love where, he's unpredictable and he just Alfred says it best in the movie, some people just want to see the world burn.
That's it.
And that to me, exactly, I mean, and that came off perfectly with his portrayal. I mean, other than that, I love Christopher Nolan's movies, and I love that he really did try to ground Batman in real life, which he's sort of the only character you kind of can do that with. minus that whole sonar thing that at the end where they tied a bunch of computers together and stuff. But outside of that,
they built take two. They built the suspension of disbelief that you talked about. You started out not knowing what could be possible, and they start the film with the technology. Like, they start at the beginning of the film, and then what they do is they bring it full circle with saying we're just going to tie, even down to the fact that it even looks like a bunch of cell phones tied together. And that's all it really is. It's a bunch of cell phones tied together. So it's believable. It's believable. Yeah. I bought it. And even down to the fact that what makes that believable is Morgan Freeman, he's like, this is wrong. And so it really sells the idea of what this is and what does it mean to truly catch a villain. You got to become a villain yourself.
And a lot of it is just kind of that first impression I had of it. I remember when, the Thursday night showings on release were at midnight, and I did watch this at midnight, and I didn't get out till 3 a.m, and I had work the next day. But I just remember being so excited and coming out of that movie thinking like, this is my Batman. This is the Batman I had in my head, and this is the most accurate portrayal I've seen to him to date. It's just one of those. Again, it brought me back to childhood.
There you go. You heard it here. So there you go. That's Nate's number one. Derek, your number one.
My number one is always in the talks of if anyone's ever going to have a conversation of what their favorite movie is and what the best film of all time should be. And if I ever knew somebody that was as helpful as this particular supporting character, I would make sure to invite them to Zihuatanejo as well, because that's definitely where I would like to be. And The Shawshank Redemption is, of course, my favorite. It's a wonderful story. You said a lot about it. I want to be down in Zihuatanejo, sanding down my boat, chilling after I pulled it off.
Says Zihuatanejo. Is he agree? That's what's up, man.
Absolutely. Shawshank Redemption. And I know Rick Moore, once he hears this, he would also agree. That's his favorite movie as well. It's a great film. We all want to see the good guy who wrongfully goes to prison somehow get out, but we saw him turn into what he needed to be to even do it. And that's what's incredible, and that's what brings it around for me. It's what makes it a very rewatchable movie. It's not something I would watch weekly, but it's one of those, if I want to sit down and watch a great film, it's going to be Shawshank Redemption.
Boom. And there you go. You heard it here. So there you go. And we're going to be wrapping it up real quickly because I know everybody's got to get back to what they're doing. My number one is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. It's a film that has persisted through time. It's a film that comes on TV once a year. It doesn't have to be at Christmas time like A Christmas Story. It doesn't have to be at, like Halloween at Halloween. It comes on just at different times throughout the year. Just like Ben-Hur used to be one that came on all the time. It doesn't anymore. Moses used to come on like every Easter. You don't see these films anymore. The Wizard of Oz persists. What it did for Technicolor, what it did for The Dark Side of the Moon when you're smoking with your friends and playing that alongside it. If you've not played Dark Side of the Moon along with The Wizard of Oz, you've not lived yet. I'm just telling you that. That is your exclusive for this episode.
Exclusive. The Player Way.
Exclusive. It is eerie how well those two things go together, like peanut butter and chocolate. But yeah, I mean, The Wizard of Oz, it withstood the test of time. I don't feel like it gets enough credit. It was the comic book film before comic book films. Okay, think about what it did. It has all of that. It has the heart. It has the humor. It has the spectacle. And it did so much with so little. And it's one of those films that all of these films will keep talking about, but The Wizard of Oz will still be something that people continue to think about, even down to the fact that it got a revival via the Tony Awards on Broadway with Wicked, which is also an amazing musical.
That's a great play.
And so, so there you go. That's our top 5. To round out the hour really quickly, let's see if we can try to construct a top 5. for sure, we're going to do Play Your Way Network rules. Stories that came up multiple times are going to automatically end up on that list. So Shawshank Redemption will end up at number 1 because more than one person. Somewhere in the 2 or 3, we're going to have a Color Purple. I'd be willing to put a Color Purple down at 5. What say you guys?
I've actually never seen the movie.
Okay, so we'll put it at number 5 since Nate's never seen it, but 2 of us voted on it. All right, so what is numbers 4, 3, and 2?
I put Dark Knight on there. I can throw that at number 2.
Okay.
It's a great film. I mean,
What's your number 3?
Between 2 or 3.
What's your number 3?
Let's see. I'll keep my own Watchmen at number 3.
Okay, Watchmen number 3, and what's number 4 for you?
And for number 4, only because I fought myself for 17 straight minutes, and it would be Infinity War. It would
Infinity
be
War
Infinity
number
War.
4. Okay. All right.
So I would throw in Color Purple, Infinity War, Watchmen, Dark Knight, and Shawshank.
I'll put Infinity War at number 4. Okay, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with Infinity War at number 4. Y'all give me Pulp Fiction at 3.
Oh, Pulp Fiction is a good one. Pulp Fiction is
because I would put Pulp Fiction over The Departed. There's a lot of notes of Pulp Fiction in The Departed.
I would put Pulp Fiction ahead of The Departed based on viewing it as a complete film.
Okay.
And The Departed is like an incredible story. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not even going to.
Nate, what about number? Do you agree with Pulp Fiction at number 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Number 2. This is going to be the hard one. All right. So Derek says, you say.
I say Dark Knight. That's Nate's number 1. So
Nate,
that's
number
a
1.
strong case. And I know that you personally feel that The Dark Knight is what it is because of Heath Ledger, and if you take him out, it's not even in the conversation. And I know that that's your thing.
And I have a Batman hat on too right now. All right, since I automatically got Shawshank,
number 2 is the Infinity War again.
So you put Infinity.
It's at number 4 and number 2.
You know what? Based on its mark for right now, I will go ahead and concede defeat. I've been outvoted 2-1, and I'll go ahead and give you The Dark Knight. So our number 5, starting with number 5, is The Color Purple. Number 4 is going to be Infinity War. 3 is going to be Pulp Fiction. Number 2 is going to be The Dark Knight, and 1 is The Shawshank Redemption. You heard it right here on Weekly Top 5 Podcast, done
The Player Way.
Shout out to my co-captains Nate.
That's me.
And Derek.
Corrupting the list, Dato. But it's corrupting the system. You already know.
If you want to keep the conversation going, if you want to argue, tell us how terrible we are, you can go on Facebook at Play Your Way Network on Facebook. Follow us, like us, and give us a complaint right there in front of everybody, and we'll argue with you about it. I promise you will. And we'll also, you can hop over to Player Way Podcast at Player Way Podcast on Instagram. While it is the Weekly Top 5 Podcast, it's all a part of the one and only
The Player Way.
So, like we say on the other one, like we always do at this time, no matter what path you take or actually decide to follow, just make sure you're doing it
The Player Way.
Nate, send us off.
I hope they remember you.
We'll see you next week.
This has been the Weekly Top 5 Podcast, presented by Play Your Way Network and Agency Cartel Clothing Company, the official clothing for grind time.
And as always, recorded in a single take between Los Angeles, California, Dallas, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, featuring Nathan Peterson, Derek Lewis, and BK Jackson. Special thanks to our senior writer, Ian Parsons.
And I'm Darren Marlar, showing you how to narrate The Player Way.